Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Plus Three Futures and Commodities show. On today's show, we're going to continue part two of the saga of the E-mini. What path are we going to choose? We're going to talk about what information we got this week and what it means going forward. We're also going to explore opportunities in commodities land. There are several commodities which we have had our eye on, which we are going to talk about, as well as copper. Very telling story, much like happened with cocoa, happened in copper. So all that and more on today's show. As always, my name is Ben Maldonado. We are recording here at about 2:30 on Friday afternoon, May 24th. Barrie, how we doing today?
Doing great, doing great.
Yeah, this is my partner, Barrie Hederachi, and we're going to jump right into E-mini because while the story may not be complete, we did get some chapters added this week. What say you? Where are we? Looks
Well,
like we're sitting on
clearly,
top of the full square.
yeah, exactly. I was going to say, clearly, we're sitting on top of the square. And I think that's pretty much where we left off. The thing was, if you guys are new, just I'll give you like a 20-second sort of a story. I mean, the whole thing started with the high that happened in March because a lot of cycles expired there. So we expected, obviously, some kind of a correction. And we got one. We got this first leg down into about 5,049 and some change. And then on the way up, we were looking to possibly for it to do a lower high, and that would be a secondary place to sell. And why do we look for that? Well, because the markets, put that pattern in often enough where we should watch it. And barring that, what could happen next to the downside? Well, we could break up above and reverse immediately, and that would give us a false break. And that's another opportunity to sell. And all through that, we said, well, the square out happened right below 53.10. So here it was 52.81. Let's say 52.81, 52.82 is where the exact 144-degree level was. And we said, well, if price settles on top of it, then it's a different plan. Then there's another cycle that's pushing it higher, and we'll have to reassess what's happening and not think in terms of, well, it has to go down, right? That's just the very basic. We're good up to now, Ben? That's
Yeah,
kind of the
that's
story,
the
right?
story. Yeah.
So what happened this week? Well, we managed through all kinds of news and news items and earnings and whatnot. We managed to hang above this 42.81, 82 level with an inside day coming in today. All right. So what's it telling us? Well, it's telling us it's in a strong position. Okay. It's not weak. Now, is this something, what do we do here? Well, if it continues to hold above this 42.81, we're going to have to look at the long side, because if we clear this like we're doing, we're holding above, then the next stop is really getting into like 55.70 in the futures market. And that's just how it works.
And ironically, we got a false break and an outside reversal bar yesterday, which are, you know, signs that it may have topped, but it's not, the support is still there.
Well, with an inside bar and a 3-day weekend.
Weekend. Yeah.
So,
Nothing like keeping you guessing.
so it's loaded. And so that's why we have to, really slice this carefully so we don't get tripped up by anything. And I know one thing, if you just stay with the squares and our levels and the timing, everything turns out okay. So the other thing we don't want to miss is we did do on trading days, we did, manage to do 144
Yep, we did the
days,
144.
right, last week. And 144 in time. I think we're right about the 1/8 is right about this 43.50 level. So, if you were to push the limits, the rules to the limits of practicality, we're still within the frame of a square that, we did get squared out, and it really hasn't made a move one way or the other in terms of this square here. We're talking about this 144 in time and 144 in price. So there's that. So I'm going to leave it there just for a second. And we'll look at the cash market. Cash, this is where we're really got sort of keyed in when this high came in. We just knew that, that's obviously a square. We wanted, and we came down to support half a square, 50% of the square. Everything worked out fine. And now we were looking for it to be it's normal to look for this. It's normal to be looking for a lower, like we did here in September. There are examples everywhere to look for a lower high before we got to the old high. Then it'd be a double top. And if we get on top, well, that means this cycle's really faded away and there's a much larger cycle that's pushing the market. So, or a combination of cycles that are stronger, right, than the one that put in the 144 by 144. So, and what did it do? Well, it managed to stay above, just very clean. But we also managed to stay under the 1/8 of the square above us.
Right.
So technically we're consolidating between this square here and the 1/8 here. Now the 1/8 is sort of the rule not everybody knows about, but it's something, if you trade it long enough, you want to keep an eye on. So we're kind of in the same kind of a place where we were last week, mainly because we really didn't do much. You see what happened all week. It was kind of a quiet week, except for yesterday. And if we take yesterday out, we basically just had a small, very tight consolidation. But nonetheless, it was all above the 144 level, which is right about 52.59. Well, we just have to go with it. It's the same story. Is it boring? Yes, but we still have to stay with it. If you guys haven't caught the show from last week, check it out because we spent a lot of time explaining everything, and I don't think we have to go to all of that again just to bore everybody, right? So anyway, here's the Dow.
Interesting. You got a lower high there.
Yeah, so the Dow got a lower high, and it was a lot weaker. Like Wednesday, they were very weak, weaker than the rest, I would say. And we really didn't manage to make a higher high. So that's another reason, why I'm sort of pausing here to watch. So the Dow didn't make a new high, lower high, and we sold off. Then we have the cash sitting right between the 1/8 of the square above and the full square here. Again, it's not, we really didn't break to the upside. And the futures market, pretty much the same case. We're sitting above this 52.81, 82 area, and right below the 1/8, which is right there, right about 53.47 or 48. What do we do from here? Well, we have to wait. Like Ben, we were talking just a little while ago about how the market's consolidating right now. Look how tight the 30-minute is.
Yeah.
A little bit of a flag, right? Little triangle. And that's what's happening. So there's nothing to do unless you're taking guesses at this market. So we're going to wait to see what happens. I'll go to the 30-minute just to give you guys a quick update because
the 30 is really interesting because it's triangulating like right below resistance, right at resistance.
And these levels, as you guys know, if you watch it, we've had these levels for a while. And the square, I moved to the prior low. So this is pretty much the setup we had this week. And looking at this week, 53.25, if you guys pick it up from last week, we talked about that a lot, and we held above, did a false break, which 53.04 was right there. Then we snapped back right back into 43.64 area, which is where we had the zone. This is all beforehand, by the way. This is I didn't draw these in after the fact. Right, Ben?
No, that's true.
These are all in place before price got there.
And there's video evidence if you want to check it.
Yeah, there's video evidence, there's post on Twitter, so it's all there. Anyway, the point is we got up into this resistance zone, and I was looking for a reversal, and we got that, and we stalled again at 53.25. You can see how this level is such a critical level either way, right? On the way up, we were messing around. This is sort of like mean reversion level. It has been so far. No matter what, went up there, came back, went down to exactly 50% the other way,
came back,
and snapped back. Now we're stuck here. So it looks like this 53.64, 52.75 is sort of the larger bracket, and 53.25 is sort of the mean reversion for now. And we talked about how of course, this is 30-minute, right? On the daily, how we're sitting on top of that level. So that level on the daily, let's just say it roughly translates into this 52.75 level. And you can see how this is the Thursday market. We came down, we held above it, and we rallied right back up to 53.25. So on the shorter term, in looking at the 30-minute, this 53.25 is a key level for next week. We want to see if we can sort of settle above that, go up and challenge 53.48, or if you're going to get stuck below 53.25 and then take out 53.04. If we do that, if we take out 52.75 again,
then we're going.
The level we're sitting on top right now can give away very quickly. So that's the thing. But up until then, this level is fairly solid. Then again, so is this 53.25. You see why it could be kind of a tight space to work through. And you have to kind of know, when to shoot and when to watch your powder. So this is one of those watch your powder parts. But when we get to the exact levels, you can definitely take the trade because your risk is so low. We knew this area beforehand. We knew 52.75 beforehand. So if something turns around those areas, you can certainly take the trade, but not when we get to the middle where all the drama starts. So I'd say we have to wait to see which way this consolidation breaks. I guess we'll have to wait till Monday night to find out. That's what I have to say about the 30-minute. It was kind of a slow week till Thursday came around. Anything you want to add to this, Ben?
No, I think that frames it very well. We're in the middle of this consolidation zone, so we just got to wait for clues as to what it wants to do.
Right, and we know the markers we're watching. Right, we talked about all of them, so now you guys know. Now let's take a look at the weekly, just to like we do every week, just to kind of put things into perspective, and why we have to do a little bit probably more talking than action at this point, because we're kind of stuck at this 288 degrees up from the low in 2009. And that's sort of a key level. And obviously, because we've been stuck there for a couple of months. So we're waiting to say which way is it going to clear, because on a weekly basis, when one of these levels clear, there's a lot of space to run. And if we clear to the upside, great. We're going to have a hell of a lot of room to run. And same thing if we sort of break to the downside, outside of some other consolidation. I'm talking weekly, right? Longer term.
Sure.
We're looking at probably a couple of years ahead. And because we're exactly at that line, that's why we're kind of really trying to slice this thing in a way that's easy to understand and also pick out the proper trade.
And as you can see from the weekly, it's also, when you catch it, you catch much bigger moves, lasting moves.
Yes,
sure. Years sometimes.
Coming off this support, I remember this. I mean, look at that move we got. And there are bigger moves, but now we're at this resistance level, right? So that's what we have to deal with. All right, let's move on to bonds. Not a whole lot.
Week there.
Yeah, it's kind of a it's a bit of a slow week, but we did come right into smack into the middle of our support level. When I say that, I'm talking about this consolidation. Yeah, we went right into the middle of it. But, I think there's more movement or sideways or otherwise. I don't think it's ready to start selling off just yet. And 119.5 area is still our support. That's that. Let's look at the weekly bonds. Same story. We are doing a triangle in here, you guys, so make sure we notice that. And I drew that in this triangle right there. And we did get into this 216 by 144. And I'm just curious to see how this plays out. The 1/8 of the square did hold the market, which is right around 118.5. And I think for me, the key thing is to see, are we going to consolidate below this, or are we going to get on top of it? If we get on top of it, we have a little bit more to go. Like this box here, the lower part of the box, around 123, where the next level is. But up until then, the 118.5 area really is the resistance. And with this being a potential square, we know the long-term trend is still lower, but we're waiting for this to clear up a little bit, especially with the inside week in between all of that. Not a whole lot to do.
Inside week, inside month.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's an inside month as well.
All right. So June, July could be exciting for bonds.
And bonds are, at this stage the bonds have a direct correlation with equity. So if bonds are strong, it's going to be like a tailwind for the stock market.
Well, certainly bonds aren't weak, right?
Right.
So we have to watch that because it's holding above the levels and it did square out. So some things happened in time. And I was telling Ben earlier, like all the markets were I was kind of yawning because not much happened. Here, we almost have 3 drives, but it's very, very tiny drives, maybe on a 4-hour or 60-minute, it might look better. But either way, we're coming down into the support level. Our key support is the 73.5, but we do have a square level at 75. We'll see what happens. I mean, we've been talking about ever since we broke this line that, it's probably going to consolidate. The odds are it's the consolidation's what's happening, and we just have to wait to see when we get reeled up to move higher. So we're still bullish. We just have to wait for it to finish up the consolidation.
Yeah, my comments on crude was it was just sideways continues.
Yeah, and here's our box for reference that we put on a couple of weeks ago, and we can just kind of count the bars. We got 3 weeks perfectly sideways, not much. Could we do a flush down to 73 and something? Yes, we could, and that's the bottom of the box. And I told you guys last week, this 81 is sort of the middle of the box. If we flip to the upside, then we're done with this. And in the middle of all that, we did have a triangle here, potential triangle, and we are sort of breaking out of it to the downside. We'll see how that works out. It's a weekly, so we have plenty of time to watch it, see what happens. But it's super interesting how low volatility this is. And that's when you really have to watch the weekly. There's an exciting segment coming up. So you're going to have to watch that. And we'll watch it very closely. Next, we go on to gold. Last week, we talked about this being a potential false break. And looks like that was right.
Yep, false break for sure.
And we had the inside bar and took out the low. And it was a nice trade to the downside in gold. And again, this is consolidation mode. So, and we've been bullish on gold, and we have to know when to put off the gas. And this is one of those times we're going to let it finish up and see where the lows come in, because that false break could, it seems logical for us to think that it's going to take out this previous low and at least test the 50% of the square around 52.60. Now,
which would still be super bullish.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, look, we can get down to
2100.
Yeah, 21.16. So it's very bullish. So up here, it's actually very strong. And getting, down to this 22.60 would be a nice, healthy correction in a very strong position, right? So, and I feel like it's done because I see everybody's talking about metals and wanting to trade gold and copper. So it seems like,
they need to be burned.
Yeah. So that's
the late arrivals, that is.
Yep. And they're there, right on time. And why is this level, why we're like so convinced we should back off? Well, probably because of this. We're 270 degrees up from the low back in 1999. So it's a long time. Exact week, July 23rd, 99. Coming off of that low, we are up at 270 degrees. So I think, a little break would be okay. And speaking of, is it still bullish? Well, we can, like you said, 2100, actually 2050 is still in all new territory here. We just made, right? So gold, it's very, very strong. And I think, however, this correction finishes consolidation, we can, pick it up on the other end. Let's talk about copper. We went up to resistance. I thought we might go up and touch the 50% of the square. Didn't quite get up there, which just shows how much weaker it is. But that's on the square at 90. So if you go to, 93 330s, right? If you go to the
Hmm.
60, you can see how we squared out, 120 by 480. So we
Yep.
went right up into that.
Hmm.
And you can see that in the 90 if you put up all the third lines.
Hmm.
But then it becomes too many lines. It's much easier to just jump to the 60 and show you what happened.
Yeah,
And
that's a good square.
right, yeah. So it's still the 90, but we're looking at a different aspect of it, like in thirds of the 90, right? So here, if copper is really off to a good start, and it looks like it is, 450 area is really where we want to hold, and that's 50% of the square. So that would be 30 degrees down, perfectly uh, normal correction after this kind of a move up, a little bit over 60, so probably like 66 degrees.
Hmm.
So so we're good. Copper, let it correct and finish up, and we'll pick it up on the other side. Move it on to copper weekly. And we had 135 degrees up at 526, 525.
Hmm.
And last week we talked about the potential for false break.
Got that.
Got that in spades. What's
Hmm.
funny is when false breaks come right along with, you see a lot of news about it, and you see the mainstream is interested in copper all of a sudden when they've never even talked about it for years.
Barry, remember the story I was talking about with Coco? I was at the gym and they had CNBC on. I never watched CNBC, and they had a huge feature on Coco, and it topped the next day.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, it topped. I'm not kidding. Go
Yeah,
back
yeah.
and check.
I
Go
remember
back if you.
you actually talked about it
Yeah,
at the
yeah. I
time,
put a
right?
post out on it on X, and I talked about it on one of the shows. Go back and go on the CNBC website, look at the date of the story, and then look when Coco topped. It's either the day before or the day after. Within a day, it topped. So
And
it
yeah,
is uncanny how that happens.
I have a similar thing because I don't watch at all, and it's really like friends calling because they know I trade, and
Right.
like just the other day somebody called and said, "Oh, I think I should be in copper." And I'm like, "Oh my God, well here it is, we do have a false break and it's probably done." So
Is that the perfect timing guy, the contrarian timing guy?
no, this is somebody else.
A different one? Yeah.
Yeah, so there's always somebody in the group, that's good
Right.
for that. There
Right.
was yeah, it wasn't him, it was another guy. So anyway, that's the story. I think so. 455 looks like, not just looks like, it'll be very good support if we can get down to here basis weekly.
Hmm.
It could go a lot lower and still be in very good shape down into even 425, 430. But let's look for support around 455 and see how we do. I'm just not sure how strong of a false break this is. Normally a false break could take you down for a while. I
Right.
mean, it could be months, but we didn't have a huge run up. It's like a very short coiling and then run up. So it looks like there's more to the upside, but not, we'll see where we find support, and we'll take it from there.
I mean, just one of the things I'd add on copper, I was looking at some timing just in past cycles,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it was yeah, on a weekly, like we had topped at 102, 103 in terms of trading days. And I think this time we were at like around 99,
Oh, okay.
right around 98, 99. So it's close.
Right, right.
And that's weeks, remember. So it's
Oh,
not
okay. On
it's
the
not
weekly.
days.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So um
I mean,
that
those
it
things will
might
be,
be a decent top. We'll see.
and it's funny you make talk about 100. So here is on a daily, we we did 100 degrees,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Funny when these numbers line up, they line up everywhere. So, all right. So we talked about copper. Let's move on to the dollar. And well, we're on the last trend line. We're just, 105 we were keying off 105 because 104.87 is the third of the square. Uh, and we got into all of this after it squared out here, and we did the ABCD up. And you can see how, we turned after that, did a little false break right there,
Hmm.
or attempted false break. And so I think dollar's probably going to be soft till we're done because we haven't really come into any kind of support yet. And I can work up some support off a couple of levels next week. But for now, I think watching this trend line is enough. if we can hold the trend line or not. If not, then we have more to go,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll sort of work it out at that point. But for now, let's just watch it. It's kind of doing a little bit of a correction. Let's see the weekly. So here's the weekly.
We're in that big consolidation,
Yeah,
right in the middle of it.
exactly. And it's funny you mention it because that's exactly what I was going to talk about.
Yeah.
Because after the whole Ukrainian thing, Russian thing, we popped up, came back, and everybody got their act together, and now we've managed to keep it perfectly swinging in this box,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, the real run will happen once we break this. That's why I keep saying if we take out this 106.75 area, we
Big
settle
move.
about this square, we're going to
Mm-hmm.
go
Mm-hmm.
because we broke the box, right? And it's really important to watch that we are having higher lows going up into this. So I'm super patient watching this, just let it finish its correction, let it be, let it be. Long as we're making higher lows, it's in a place where it could start turning
Mm-hmm.
any day, but it might not be just right now. Again, something to watch this week. All the inside bars we've had on a weekly basis, so that definitely indicates some movement picking up next month. So no question. So that's in the cards. So rest up while we can, right? So
Yeah,
take a long
exactly.
weekend and really rest it up because we're going to be busy.
Mm-hmm.
Going into the euro, well, this is why we like this 108 level. You can see we consolidated under it, broke out for one day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then what do? We spent the rest of the days pulling back right into 108. And then we bounced off of it. So that's the power of the levels. And that's where we're using it. So long as we're above that, euro's in let's just say a firmer position, like a firm position. Strong really wouldn't happen up until euro has its own box. So until we break that, and we
Mm-hmm.
can see that in the weekly. But for now, you can see we're basically just wrapping around the 108 level. And if you guys are trading it short term, just know it's strong about 108. So which direction to trade.
Mm-hmm.
Makes it easy to know, right, Ben? Knowing which
For
direction is
sure.
everything, right?
Yep.
And here's the weekly.
Triangulating.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, we drew up the triangle last week. And
Mm-hmm.
also here's that same box we saw in the dollar, right? So, up until, so he's managed really well as far as I can tell. And I think long as we are in this, we're just going to have to trade. I'll go off the extremes. And you can see how the extremes are getting narrower and narrower. So at some point, this is going to break. And like we talked about earlier, when the weekly triangles break, they can really
Big
move.
moves. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they can really move. So let's watch to see what happens. Speaking of weekly triangles, I mean, there's one here,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's a weekly triangle there.
And look at the move out of there.
Yeah, very nice move. Very nice move. And there's
Mm-hmm.
we had this big inside thing. There's this other triangle here.
Mm-hmm.
And moving out of that was fairly large. So
Mm-hmm.
these things happen a lot. So you want to keep an eye on these, meaning the patterns. So again, we're about 108, resistance around 110. Not much to do. If you trade the euro, that's the direction to trade.
Mm-hmm.
Getting back into what else we got left.
What about the Hang Seng? That had a big move down, huh?
Very big. And so here's the thing. We called, 19,450 was resistance. We were looking for it to stall out at that level, and we more or less we did. I
And
think
there you go.
which was so hard, we went up, and then and there was our turn. And the correction wise, I mean, it'd be really healthy if we can hold above 18,000, 18,050.
You really need to hold the half square, though.
Well, yeah. I mean, if we get down here, a lot of things are going to be stalling out.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's still, yeah, we still have a low in place, and it's still very, on the practical side, yeah, it's textbook correction, and everything should be fine on that side. But if this is some start of some kind of a big impulse, then that's when these levels should hold. That's
Right.
what I mean. Ideally, if this holds on the next impulse up, we'll take this out, then we'll probably be checking, 21, 22 area level. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason for that is look how much, how we sold off, right? So it's
Yeah.
big move down. And a lot of the stocks in the Hang Seng, they are, well, a lot of them are moving and a lot of them putting really good lows in here. Anyway, so that's it for the Hang Seng. So we just for the record, we called out that turn, and now we're looking for support around 18,000, let's say.
Mhm.
The other one is natural gas.
Yeah, I'll talk about that. Look where it stopped.
You can covering it, right?
Yeah.
This week? Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, we stopped exactly at the quarter
That.
square.
Yep.
When you got a square that's working, boy, you just leave it alone. You don't do anything.
Yeah, don't mess with it.
You don't mess with it. And the thing is, we're smack in the middle of this consolidation box that we drew out. I don't want to
Mhm.
drag it out, but you guys can see how that line is right in the middle.
Mhm.
So we were able to penetrate all the way there. Which, so natural gas, I think, I mean, for sure the lows are in, and hopefully corrections will be shallow, and we'll see how we move from here. But just so you know, after we called out this 153, it did just perfectly do what it's supposed to do. When I remember down here, everybody's in a panic. Oh my God, natural gas is done. It's going to go lower. You
Right.
remember that? I don't know if you remember, but
Yeah, I do. I do.
and it's just then it switched, and here we are.
Yep.
So it's nice. I think squares are a nice way to kind of watch the sentiment change, and it's easy to correlate it with what's happening on the sentiment side.
Sure.
People are talking. So that's all I have. We had a couple of requests to cover platinum, and not much going there. It swings nicely. It's a nice cyclical market. We don't really trade it, but maybe I'll add it next week if people
Okay.
are interested. We can just cover it and give it a couple of minutes and talk about it that way. Well, that's all I got. Let me put it back to you. We'll cover
Good coverage. Good coverage.
Thanks, Ben. We'll
A
cover
lot to think about over the long weekend.
lot to think about. And also, if you saw those inside bars on the weekly level, there's something brewing, and there's some volatility we can trade coming up. There's no question about that. It's just in the air,
Yeah.
and so I think June, July is going to be active months, so it's going to be fun. Well, Ben, I see the Nasdaq's also sitting on top of some half square.
It's deja vu with like about 30 minutes ago, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking about that when I was looking at this chart. Uh, the NQs, I put this out last weekend in a post where we did 144 by 144. Now we've pushed up, pulled back, but look where we pulled back, right to the half square.
Mm.
So it's very simple in this case. This half square, we call it, 18,640. Above that, as long as we can stay above that, we've got room to run. If we fall below and get stuck under it, then this whole little structure here becomes a false break.
Right.
I mean, it's as simple as that, and it mirrors, what Barrie was reviewing in the ES, pretty clearly. It's a very similar situation. 144 in time is important. 144 in price is important. We're still battling at this area, give or take an eighth, right? Maybe an eighth or a quarter in this case. And we're still battling to see, which direction's going to win out here. Are we going to fail here, or are we going to sit on top and go again?
Right.
And right now we're just waiting for more information to say, what seems to be more probable at the moment, because we're sitting on top.
Mm-hmm.
The probabilities favor we go more. But are we out of the woods yet? No, not yet.
We're just getting into the woods.
Exactly. We're just in the woods and trying to figure out our direction for getting out. And we'll see soon enough. Let's jump to the weekly. I put this in because this was interesting to me as well.
Mm-hmm.
If we do an ABC off of the low in October of 22,
Mm-hmm.
right here,
Yeah.
it gets us up to about 19,700, 19,720.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And
20 is
again,
right there, right at the half square too.
yeah, yep. So if we go, right? If the daily settles above the 144 like we showed, and we can stay above this, this full square on the weekly, this is your likely target, 19, 20,000.
Mm-hmm.
And if we did it in time, look when it would be, end of July.
Right.
And then we tell you why that's important. Now let's look at the monthly. So here's the monthly with time counts from different lows. 22 months takes us to August. 52 months takes us to July. 101 months takes us to July. And about, well, we're at 259 right now in May. That's from the '02 lows. So
That's quite
the
a bit.
interesting
Mhm.
thing are the ones, the 52 and the 101 that come right in July. So if we go, maybe we make it make that July high. And again, the price, this is the same ABCD just on the monthly, puts us up around 20,000. Anything else to add here on the NQs?
Well, let's look at the weekly for a second. I was
Sure.
looking at that. I mean, looking at those monthly charts that you just looked at, can we go there for a second?
Hmm.
And they're all lining up to July.
These two, 52 and
Yeah,
101 are, this one's to August, which is 22. And these are
which is
all
just
good
one
square
bar off.
numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, all good square numbers.
Well, that all looks good. I mean, depends how we break above that 108. But I'm also thinking, isn't there like a FOMC in July? I
I'm
mean,
not sure. I'm not
that
sure.
could be
I
the
think
trigger. Yeah.
maybe you're right. Maybe that's the meeting that does it.
So anyway, we'll see. It all lines up. Seems
It's
like.
interesting. We run these time counts just to be aware of what might happen, and then, let price do what it may. Remember, if price gets stuck below this, we stop worrying about where the top's going to be, and we start saying, okay, what is this correction going to look like?
Right.
And that's the key thing that we're looking at. Hopefully, having answers, Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. Had some interesting and surprising price action in Bitcoin. It looked like we were going to go,
Mm-hmm.
like this was going to be the one that was going to take us to a new high, and then we pulled back fairly sharply, and now we're sort of crisscrossing and trying to see, what's going to happen here at this half square. I
Right.
drew in this channel, and maybe we're just in this choppy sort of fourth wave type action before the next push higher.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we're right now, for me, it's kind of no man's land because we're in this mess here,
Mm-hmm.
and we got to really, pick a direction, settle on top of this half square, and then I'm confident that we're going to go up and take out the full square, or settle below it, and then we're going to come back down here and test. We've been basically crisscrossing all week. So I don't think there's a lot to do in Bitcoin short term. What's your opinion here?
Well, if we take it off the low, we just finished the third. We could be going to a choppy fourth. So yeah, I would
Hmm.
say just kind of let's wait to see how he settles.
Yeah, let it play out. On commodity land, let's go to commodities. It was an interesting week. As you saw with Barrie's review of gold and copper, and crude oil, there's a lot of choppiness, and especially on the gold and copper, it looks like something finished there. And I would throw silver in the same category. I'm not going to do a full review on silver because I don't think there's anything to do right now, but I do want to at least show you something on the weekly that we touched on last week. Remember, from this low on the weekly last week, we were talking about 90 weeks comes in this week,
Mm-hmm.
and look what we got there. We made a push to a new high,
And
and and
reversed.
and reversed pretty hard, and we're closing near the low. Does that mean that silver is bearish? Absolutely not. What I think it means is that we finished something here. With the fact that gold had the false break and did some squares and things, and we could see, that gold probably finished something there. We had an outside reversal bar on the weekly in gold, copper, something similar. Maybe maybe we just pull back to this half square, which is, 29.75, 30 area. We do that and we chop around on that. Super bullish.
Or
And we
even
could,
2750, I would
I
think.
was going to say we could even pull back to the full square, which is around 27.50 and still be super bullish. But I think short term, something ended there. So silver still very bullish longer term, just a little cautious in the short run if you're trying to initiate positions on a bullish way. Probably not the best time there. Let's go to the grains. The grains look good, so we're going to cover wheat, corn, and soybeans. We'll cover coffee, and then we'll end with nat gas. So let's start with wheat. Last week when we talked, we said wheat had a nice pullback, pulled right back to the half square. This is a great risk reward entry, and look what happened this week. Nice reversal, move up, and we're pushing higher. So this last week was a good example. It
Yeah.
is once you get that initial move, you look for pullbacks to support. We had both structural support here because here was the previous high, and we had support from the half square that we stayed on top of.
Right.
You enter on the reversal, nice low risk reward worry there. Not a lot of stress when you trade that way.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at the weekly. You can see the weekly, we're going to get a close here above we do have a close, full square. So next week, I'd like to see if we can get this full bar above that full square. That means we'll have captured the square, and then we open up, this half square up here, which is around 825 would be that level. Plodding along, pushing away. It's kind of boring once you triangulate it, but it becomes much more mechanical.
Mm-hmm.
There's your monthly. So
Off
we're
to
going
a
to
good
have
start.
we're going to have a nice monthly bar once the May bar prints, next Thursday, Friday, I think. So we'll have a really nice monthly bar, and two pushes off. We've captured this square, this half square, and so next one is the full square around 757, 758. The other thing to notice, high to low here was 28 months. High to low here was 26. So that cycle looks to have played out. And you did call that as soon as we made that low on a daily basis. That was a very good call
Mm-hmm.
on the low on wheat. Anything to add on wheat?
No, we're good. Let's just trade it.
I mean, this is again, we were highlighting it last week as a good example of you got to pull back on a reversal, you can play it, and that's how it kind of played out in the market.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at corn. Here's corn. A little choppy this week, but again, another higher low and a reversal. Just it's consolidating a little bit as it tries to get through these overhead trend lines. This is the one from the highs of the Russian invasion. So
Mm-hmm.
once it pushes through here, we should get a nice pop up to the full square, and the full square there is around 499, 500. So that's the next target here on corn. Let's take a look at the weekly. There's your weekly inside week, which is okay. So using
Looks
the Barrie
perfect.
theory, watch the low and the high of this week's bars. Whichever one gets taken out first should give you a good clue as to the direction
Mm-hmm.
of the next bar. And we're closing near the high, so that bodes well for taking that out early next week. And let's look at the monthly, just to tie the monthly together here. Got a nice up bar working on the monthly, clearing the half square. Once that prints, it opens up the full square, which is around 547. So there, along with wheat, wheat's further along than corn, but corn's further along than beans. They're moving and just showing that the tide has shifted from a bearish pattern to a bullish pattern. And now we're just trying to find, spots to get involved with good risk reward ratio. Anything to add on corn?
No, we're good. Good cover. That's exactly what's happening, and we'll wait to see what happens. I
Let's
mean,
look at
wait for the
beans.
next move.
Yeah, beans I want to show you because I found some new information that helps to solidify what the pattern is here. So beans, we had this pullback. The Pullback was holding the full square on the reversal. We're moving up, in a choppy manner, but moving up nonetheless. We want to see it push, give us a higher high, higher low. Come up here and test this half square would be the next thing, right? Here we're testing the full square, held, reverse. Now we go up. Next one is test the half square. Let's look at the weekly. After having one down week, barely, but it is a down bar, strong reversal here.
Yep.
This is the thing I wanted to show you. I was looking at the counts from high to low
90.
from the 90 weeks,
Yeah. It's
which is
huge.
solid. We ended on an ABCD that was 90 weeks high to low. So that low, I'm confident, is really solid. Now it's just, figuring out a spot to get in if you're not in yet.
We should have like a little racing flag emoji waving here on some of these charts,
Right. The checkered flag.
checkered flag. Yeah.
When it's done, when it squares out, here's your checkered flag. Okay, that leg's done. Next race is starting.
Mm.
Here's your monthly. It's going to be a little overhead here as we hit this half square, and that's at around 1275. We're closing on the highs of this towards the high end so far this month, which is good. 3 or 4 more trading days should put in a nice monthly bar there. But look at the strength of this one bar, Barrie. It took out 3 months previous worth of price action.
Very strong. Good
You know,
strength.
as it was grinding here at the low,
Mm-hmm.
you can see it more on the daily what it was doing there. And then we have this big move. So here's what it was doing on the daily, this grind here, up, down, not really just bouncing between this half square. And then this month, we've basically taken out all this price action. So again, like corn and like the leader wheat, it's doing what it needs to do to be bullish. High to low here, 20 months.
Mm-hmm.
If you take these two inside bars as well, you could say it's 22 months, and 22 is a good number. So the grains progressing well, reversed nicely in this past week, showed some strength. Just look for bullish spots to play them on the long side, because it looks like the lows and all of them are in, and we're now sort of building towards catching that fast move higher. Whatever the news is going to be is coming at some point, and that's when these things will really fly. All right, let's go to anything else to add on beans, Barrie?
No, we're good. Everything's grains are on track.
Coffee's another one that's done a very nice reversal.
Mm-hmm.
So we were tracking coffee
right on
into
the line, right?
yeah, let me look at that, right?
Perfect. Yep.
So the key thing is we put in this spike high. We said, okay, this thing, squared out. There could be some sort of correction and a reversal. It was a full square correction. But again, when it comes down here, sits on the square and then gives you a higher low. And this is when we were talking about it last week. Hey, if you didn't get involved in the first run, here's a decent shot because the risk reward is really low. You've got a series of higher highs and higher lows. Boom, there you go. And we close near the highs of the week above the half square. So the next thing we're going to do is challenge this high we had in April, and the full square, and see if we can sit on top of it this time. And this is kind of how it builds, right? You can see off the low what it does. We push up, struggles here at the half square, finally gets on top of it, pushes up to the full square, didn't quite make it, comes down, higher low, can't make it, pulls back, higher low, and then we get the move. And then these corrections become much shorter. They can be sharp, but short in time as the bull market sort of progresses. And that's what we're kind of seeing in coffee. Let's take a look at the weekly. Of course, we close right on the half square.
Mm-hmm.
That's the next key spot from a weekly basis. We want to get a close over this 220 area. Next week, if we get a full bar over there, that'll be a really good sign. But look at the pullback, and we showed this a couple weeks ago. Pullback came right
Perfect
to the full square. Let's take a look at the monthly. Monthly, we're inside so far. And the monthly triangulates a lot. So it wouldn't surprise me if we pushed up, made a lower high here and then triangulated a little more. I mean, you can see the different triangles in this market. It likes to do triangles here, here, right here when we broke out. So it's on track. The market looks good. Just find, if you're not involved, find a good spot to get in. It looks bullish, and the bigger time frames are starting to kick in as well.
Mhm.
Anything else to add here?
No, we're good. We're good.
All right, let's
Good
jump
coverage.
to natural gas. Old Natty. Man, it stays quiet and then it goes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Gotta
this
love.
thing,
Mhm.
and the key is when you're in this boring, frustrating part is to watch for the clues. And what are the clues? In this case, the bullish clues, you have a low, a high, you get a higher low, you get a higher high, and that's what sort of clues you into the fact that somebody's accumulating it. The key thing here, which is we stalled right here a little bit a few weeks ago, the half square. And as
Mhm.
you can see, when you look left, that was an important spot because this is where this whole congestion was here, and you had all this overhead that was just overhead here. Now we've pushed up through that, and now we're here. We can sit on top of this full square. That's really bullish,
Yeah.
and that's at 282 level. I think we're
Mhm.
gonna close just under it, but this is where we're focused now. Are we going to be able to sit on top of that? If we can, the run continues. If we get stuck under, okay, we're going to get some sort of pullback and some sort of
Just wait for
consolidation.
that correction.
Mhm. And it'll be okay, right? If the
Yeah, yeah.
correction, if
Perfect.
we pull back into this level of support down here at the half square or somewhere in here, it's fine.
Hmm.
It's the evolution of the chart, how it's going to turn from bearish to bullish. And that's what we're witnessing little by little, different phases. As you can see, the movement from here to here is very different from here to here. And these are just different phases of this transformation. All right, let's take a look at the weekly. I'll show you a couple of things on there. You can see why we're running into a little headwind at the top.
Yeah.
There's your
Oh, yeah.
trend line.
Yep. Yep.
The good news is we looks like we are going to close over that half square. If we get a full bar over that half square, then it opens up this part of the square all the way up to like 370, 372. That would be where we are at the top of the square. And again, if you look at the monthly with which what Barrie was talking about in terms of a perspective on why we were saying pretty confident you can buy down in here, it's historical
That's why.
support.
Now you
Yeah,
see why.
it's very historical support, going back to the 90s, 30 years worth of support. And look at that monthly bar. That's a nice bar.
Hmm.
So we'll see when we get the print next week where it is. It obviously has held this full square. If we could keep motoring higher, the on a monthly, so we get the monthly to kick in. You're talking about 488, 489
Hmm.
is where the half square target will be.
Pretty
And
good.
you can see it's done this half square many times, here to
Many,
here,
many times. And better.
here to here, right?
Yeah.
So this move here from a half square basis is kind of what it does. And of course, when it gets going, you see these things, right? These bigger things. But we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. And that's it for the commodities. As Barrie pointed out, looking at gold and copper, and I showed with silver, it looks like some pauses there. No threat to the bull markets, but just a pause. One that's kicking up, hopefully, and if we get some decent price action next week, I'll have it on the show, is cotton. It
Hmm.
tried to pick its head up a little bit. Sugar looks like it's trying to put in a bottom, but not enough signs to highlight it on the show yet. But I keep my eye on them when they're ready. I'll make sure we talk about them.
Hmm.
Barrie, with the time we got left, one of the things that you and I talk about frequently, but we haven't talked about on this show in a long time, is the sort of the mindset and the psychology of a trader.
Hmm.
I think it's one of the things that finally allowed me to make that big transition and be successful in trading was when
Hmm.
I got the psychology right. And
Hmm.
I know I didn't put enough emphasis on at the beginning. I thought, oh, I got to be able to read charts, and I got to know the entries, and I got to know candlesticks, and I got to know this indicator, and I got to know that. But really the mental part of trading, if you don't have that right, the chances of you being profitable and successful are really, really low. So why
Right.
don't we spend a few minutes and talk about that, and we can go back and forth and ask questions. But talk talk to you to your process of like how you make sure that you are and how you learned about the proper attitude and what you do to sort of make sure that you have the proper attitude and mental sort of state of mind when you're trading.
That's a big topic. Let's see how we
It's
cover that.
huge.
It's huge. And the thing is, the mindset gets affected by so many things. It depends on the environment, your size of your account, the your understanding of risk.
What's going on with your wife or your
Right.
husband or your
The whole
girlfriend or
thing.
your boyfriend? It all affects it.
And how much sugar is in your system,
Yes. How much sleep you've had.
where the planets are. I mean, there's no
Right.
end to the things that affect you. That's the point. So many things affect you. And then you have to deal with this market where nobody knows what's happening. And by the time you hear something in the news, it's already history. And we're forced to sort of trade that in order to make a profit, where everybody's working as hard as they can to take that money from you. So it's not an easy thing. Did I leave anything out on that? Other than
No, I mean I think that's right. It's if your head is not right, I just don't see how you're going to trade profitably because
right.
there are so many sort of mental games and mind games that get played on you when you're trading.
Yeah, yeah. So I think the way to so the thing is, if you try to solve the things that affect you, for example, you said, what's happening with the wife, what's happening with the husband, what's happening
Right.
with the kids and the neighbors and the dogs and
Right.
cats. I mean, we're not in control of that. There's no way we're going to have a day, have a week, forget the week, have a day where nothing's affecting us. Like everything's just perfect. Like
Right.
it's rare. So what we have to do is find some kind of a frame where we can work within that and be able to sort of safely do the work that we have to do without getting damaged or getting hurt. So I think that's where, we have to sort of lean on the technical side. And I was just actually, when you mentioned that, I was thinking how the mind actually settles and relaxes and can see more when you can actually have something you can trust. I think the trust is the issue.
Mhm.
We can't trust tomorrow because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't really know. But you have to trust yourself to say, you know what, whatever comes, I trust that I can handle it. So I
Right.
think it's the same way with when it comes to trading. No matter what the market does, you have to have some tools that will tell you, give you the trust that you'll know you can handle it. So I think it's some combination of, your fighting spirit for one, the sort of the warrior spirit, along with the tools that you have to handle whatever the market brings. So I think the secret is really in there somewhere. And so if you drill a little more, it seems like since we can't control the things that'll affect you from the outside, and especially when we get to the market, we want to look at, well, okay, even if the dog's barking outside or something even more horrendous is happening, how
Right.
can I look at the market so I can keep the way I see things in proper
Clear.
order, right?
Yeah.
Clear. And also, what happens when things affect you is you lose your perspective,
Hmm.
right? And then your perspective, how you see things, is not consistent. And then you're like, oh, I see it like that. Now I see it like this. So when you're fearless, you see it one way. When you're fearful, you see the same thing another way,
That's true.
right? So I think it, the way I mean, one of the things, I'm sure there are other ways. One of the ways that's helped me is to really trust the tools that you use. And if you don't have the time to build the trust, go back and back test as much as you can possibly can, and to the point where you can trust it. You have to know, my system over a year, it's, whatever the percent, 65%, 75, 80% profitable, no matter what happens. And once you know that, I think that gives you the ability to be consistent in the signals that you get. So it
And
all
that,
comes, right?
yeah, that right there, what you're talking about was one of the big turning points for me is when I started thinking in terms of probabilities
Mm-hmm.
instead of saying, "Oh, I got to be right on this trade."
Mm-hmm.
It's more of I know I'm going to be right on a series of trades. I just if I follow the system, probabilities are in my favor. And there's two books. The one you gave me, which was Trading in the Zone,
Mm-hmm.
which was fantastic. And then there was a book. It's not related to trading, but it's really good, and it's called Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke, and she's a professional poker player.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing about, you know, don't worry about the results of any one hand, in her case, or in any one trade when you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
trading in the zone. It's worry about, are you following your system,
Right.
right? Did you execute your system flawlessly? If you did, that's a win, no matter what the result of the trade is.
Right.
Because over a series of trades, you will do better. It just sort of, it really took the pressure off of like, oh, I got to be right. I got to be right. I got to be right,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
instead of, I got to follow my system.
Yeah, and the thing with that is if you miss a trade, if you didn't take one for whatever reason, you can get right back on track by taking the next one.
Right.
So it's a healthy way to do it. And if you didn't take one for some reason, at least there's a lesson in that. Oh, look, I didn't take it because I was scared. I didn't think this. I heard about news or
Right.
something influenced you. So you should use that for the next time. If you get into similar chemistry, then you're like, okay, I'm feeling like this, but my system is telling me to do that. So you just execute the trade and you manage your risk. And and doing that is really sort of the hand-to-hand combat part, right? Once you get through that, you can really just sit back and relax and just print the trades out because you
And
just have
what
to
you
take the
said, that
trades.
what you just said is so important. Manage the risk, because that's now how I judge whether I did a good job or not. Is did I manage the risk, not how much
Mm.
money did I make?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's managing the risk and protecting the downside is the key to winning in this game long term.
For sure. Because I mean, you have to have a plan at least. And then once you know, I mean, not knowing what the market would do and not having any control of your environment, the only thing we really can control is, and we can't control how much profit we're going to make. Really, we don't know where the market's going to end up, how high it'll go or how low. The one thing we really can only control is how much risk we're willing to take. Isn't that right?
Correct.
I mean, it's just
That's
this,
correct.
right? The cost of the insurance. How much is the stop? How much am I going to risk for this? So it's the only thing you can control. So I think if you work that into the system, and of course it has to be part of the system,
It's
and
sort of the anti-YOLO type of attitude that people talk about, and that it's really destructive that this, just bet everything on one trade type stuff.
yeah,
That's
but
that's
those
not
aren't,
trading, that's gambling.
yeah, those aren't traders. I mean, I look at them. I mean, I think it's, yeah, for them, I think it's more for fun than
Mhm.
long term trying to make a living from that.
Right,
I mean,
right.
I don't know anybody that made a living betting everything every time. There's no way, or get past three trades. So
Right, right.
it is just very difficult. And I mean, we're talking about trading for a living, and what would you do if you're a serious trader? You definitely need to be consistent. That's the key. So then you have to come back and say, well, what are the things that affect my consistency? Well, it's a psychology. So then you look at what affects my psychology. Well, it's my environment and what how that causes me to think. Environment, including what the market's doing, right? So we got
Right.
a lot of variables, and the only thing we can rely on is, well, what do you trust when everything's uncertain? Well, you better have a couple of things. So that's why we always go back to, like, go back to your system. Have whatever the system is. There are lots of systems, but you need to find the one where the risk is something that you can deal with without stressing out, and it gives you a reliable and consistent way to be in the market and take the profit, be there for the profits when the market's running. And
Kind of like how we use the squares, right?
exactly. I mean, how I ended up in squares is after looking at everything for years. And I had the luxury to be able to just study because the first account I ever had, I blew out in like 1 week. And I'm like, oh my God, you know,
Right.
like how did that happen? There's
Right.
something wrong here. I better study. So that got me studying it like 3 years to really sort of feel out what's out there, what's working. I got lucky. I had a friend that I met told me, listen, if you really want to trade, you better study some Gann. And
Mhm.
it really said, this is what happened. It's the first guy I met, from the outside. I think I met him in some trading group back in the day, when we had
Mhm.
BBS boards and everything.
Right. Right. The bulletin
And
boards.
the guy said, look, if you really want to trade, you better study this guy and then figure out what you want to do. So I studied it and I'm like, okay, this gives me a better handle than watching indicators because indicators are just responding to the price.
Mhm.
Yeah, it can give you some predictive capability, but not as good as once you understand how the market moves and the structures and the squares. And when you put it all together, you have a much better understanding. So anyway, at least in my case, that gave me the trust that I needed to be able to manage the risk. And I think the same happened to you, right? Once you started looking
Absolutely.
at squares and
100%. It's that and then the thinking in probabilities that sort of changed my trading.
exactly. So the two, I mean, those are the things that, like the question was really about psychology, but when you go through the steps like we just talked about, it really comes back down to, well, what's at the business end of it? What do you have to
Yeah.
do? Well, I have to trade. So, and we know we can't control the psychology so much. So let's just control what we can, and trust the things we can and take it from there. I think that's a reasonable way to go about it. you know.
Well, it's a good first brush on a very broad topic that we will come back to again and again.
Mm.
But it's a long holiday weekend. Hope everybody enjoys it. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please make sure you like and share and subscribe and ring the bell and do all that stuff for us. And we'll talk with you next week. Great job, Barry. We'll talk next week.
Thanks, Ben. Have a great weekend. Good job. And we'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Ciao.